Hello everyone, I'm back and it's time to talk about Film YouTube's favorite topic, remakes. Remaking popular properties for a new audience is nothing new. It seems today everything is destined for a reboot or reinterpretation, but in the early 2000s, J-horror and other Asian horror films were specific targets for American adaptations. The Ring, The Grudge, Dark Water, Pulse, and One Missed Call were all adaptations of Japanese films, while others like Shudder and The Uninvited were based on Thai and Korean films, respectively. Japanese films are still being remade in the West today. Most recently, we got Spike Lee's take on Akira Kurosawa's 1963 movie High and Low. That's foreshadowing, by the way. Yet there was one high-profile film that was eyed for an American adaptation at the tail end of the J-horror remake craze that never came to be: Battle Royale. Although not a horror movie, it had elements that fit into the trend, like graphic violence and name-brand recognition. Battle Royale's reputation has only grown since its release. It's considered to be one of the greatest films of the 20th century and is the touchstone film of the death game genre. Though the idea of people having to kill each other until there is only one survivor was not a new concept in media, Battle Royale lent its name to and influenced the emerging genre. And yet, it was never remade, and probably never will be. So, what gives? In an era where seemingly everything is fair game for a remake or reinterpretation, why is this specific property seemingly impossible to adapt in Hollywood? Let's find out. The first and only serious attempt to remake Battle Royale was announced in 2006. The main producer involved was Roy Lee, whose early career was predominantly focused on adapting J-horror films for the American market. The films I was talking about earlier in the video were his work. Now, producers are the overall decision makers of productions. They secure rights to scripts, decide on the scale and budget of the film, and source financing from investors, studios, and distributors. My point is, a producer is mostly responsible for getting the project off the ground and not always establishing the artistic elements of the final product. So, when we find out that he also produced The Departed, Martin Scorsese's Best Picture-winning masterpiece adapted from the 2002 Hong Kong crime thriller Infernal Affairs, we should remember that his main job was probably securing rights and getting the overall project off the ground rather than anything on the creative side. Just to confirm this, he also produced the 2013 remake of Oldboy, which I talk about here, and Netflix's 2017 live-action adaptation of Death Note. Thought it wouldn't matter. Details were slim, but in an interview with the New York Times, Roy discussed some of his intentions. The screenplay will draw as much from the novel as from the movie, and it won't be a PG film or even PG-13. If the original were put in front of an MPAA board, it would get an NC-17, Mr. Lee said. So the remake is going to be at least an R. Mr. Lee's response to critics of a Battle Royale remake? "I'm a fan of the original film," he said. "I would never want to make a movie that I thought was bad." Thought it wouldn't matter. Further down, he notes, "This is the one I'm going to be the most careful with," he said of his remake, because it's the one that could most easily veer off into exploitation. As I discussed in my previous video on Battle Royale, please watch that, Toei, the film's copyright owner, was apprehensive to release the film in the United States because of the uncomfortable parallels between it and the Columbine High School massacre. They made the distribution rights so expensive that no one bothered to buy. Now, I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but I can imagine Toei would be hostile toward the idea of an American remake since they weren't even comfortable releasing the original in the States yet. I don't think that they were open to the idea of selling those rights. Faith in the project was shaken when the Virginia Tech massacre occurred in April 2007. An undergraduate student opened fire with 2 semi-automatic pistols, killing 32 people and injuring 17 others. Now, with another tragedy in the back of people's minds, how would an American remake of Battle Royale be perceived by the public? By this point, they still had not secured the rights. School shootings have only become more prevalent since then. It has become a political issue that looms large over the American public consciousness. Battle Royale was not released in the United States partially because the Columbine massacre, yet since 2000 they have become an all too common part of daily life. Battle Royale was controversial in Japan as well, but in this new context, an American movie about high schoolers killing each other became a much more sensitive topic and a harder sell. We all bring our own cultural context to the table, whether we like it or not. Of course, it was not Battle Royale's author's intention to make a statement about school shootings because he's from Japan, which has very strict gun control laws. Remember, the book was written before Columbine. Nor was it the original movie's director's intention, as he was drawing from experiences during World War II and Japan's deteriorating economic position in the 1990s. Yet, I don't need to know anything about the Japanese school system or experiences during World War II to glean the core message of the story or come up with my own interpretation. Even now, living in Japan and understanding the direct influences on the text, every time I see Kiriyama mow down those two girls with an Uzi, I can't help but think of real school shootings in America. The theme of adults exploiting the lives of children for their own political gain transcends borders. Any American studio trying to remake Battle Royale would have to incorporate commentary on the issue of school shootings, lest they be deemed exploitative or insensitive to the realities in the classroom. The parallels, though coincidental, are too obvious to ignore. In the wake of Virginia Tech, this could no longer be a simple remake like The Ring or The Grudge. It would have to be political, and I don't think the producers were prepared for that. I was unable to find any interviews where Lee stated how he would pivot the film, but the political climate was not the only reason it was never made. The final nail in the coffin came in 2008 with the publication of The Hunger Games. Its plot similarities to Battle Royale made a remake a much harder sell. The Hunger Games became an international phenomenon and spawned a 2012 adaptation that became the 9th highest grossing film of the year. The same month that the film was released, Lee came out and said that his project was officially dead. In March 2012, Lee reported that a remake of Battle Royale would no longer be possible due to the release of The Hunger Games, stating, "Audiences would see it as just a copy of games. Most of them wouldn't know that Battle Royale came first. It's unfair, but that's reality." Whether or not The Hunger Games ripped off Battle Royale is an ongoing debate, which I talk about here. But whether we like it or not, it eclipsed the Japanese film in American and international culture. I think Adam Wescott, writing for /film.com, put it best. For our purposes, the problem with The Hunger Games is not that it plays in a comparable sandbox to Battle Royale, but that it supplanted Battle Royale in the minds of audiences in the United States at that time. Producers like Roy Lee had made their career buying the rights to proven hits from Asia, recreating them with actors from Hollywood, and selling them to naive American audiences. Competing against another property occupying the same ground was a different matter entirely, and too risky for his tastes. So if Battle Royale and The Hunger Games are so similar, why can we have like 50 sequels and prequels from the latter and 0 American remakes of the former? Well, the fact that the Battle Royale takes place in the present day, uses modern weapons like guns, and the killing happens within a school setting, BR is much more relevant to the American gun control debate than The Hunger Games ever was. Now, The Hunger Games has been criticized for its depiction of violence between children, but the sci-fi elements allow it to distance itself from comparisons between real-life school shootings. Now, I do think it's possible to remake it in a way that makes compelling commentary about school shootings in the US, but I can't really think of any directors who could do it justice. I agree with Lee that this could easily veer off into exploitation and, in my opinion, probably camp, and I don't think anyone wants that. Either way, it's just too big of a risk for any movie studio to sink their teeth into. Any American remake of Battle Royale would have to do more than just change the characters' names to Shane Namowitz or Nora Nicholson. It would have to address gun violence in the United States and the system's disinterest in protecting school children, all while competing with The Hunger Games, one of the most beloved book and film franchises of all time. The idea behind these J-horror remakes was proof of concept. If it was a success in Japan and we made an English language version for American audiences, it would be a success here. Now, that's not to say that people didn't work very hard on these remakes or that transporting a story from one cultural context to another is inherently bad. I recently watched Spike Lee's take on High and Low, and I don't think the intention there was a cash grab. That's more foreshadowing, by the way. But looking at the facts, I don't think the intention for this remake was to interrogate why the system exploits children or why children become violent. Lee called himself a fan, but I couldn't find any interviews where he discussed how the themes and ideas of the original impacted him, or why this specific story should be retold in the US. It sounds like Lee was trying to capitalize on the success of a hot property that fit into a trend of J-horror remakes and got very unlucky. It was successful in Japan, so why wouldn't it be in America? Ultimately, the politics of the film, the current climate of gun control in the United States, and the release of a similar and wildly successful property doomed the project. Lee said he'd revisit the project in 10 years, and well, it's been over 10 years and none of the original issues have been resolved. Battle Royale was finally released on DVD in the US and is currently streaming on various sites, but school shootings are still common and they're still making Hunger Game movies and books. See you at sunrise on the reaping. Honestly, I'm glad they're not remaking Battle Royale. I would rather no remake exist than some subpar garbage that taints the reputation of the original by association. Plus, with the current media landscape, it's nice to know that there is at least one movie untouchable. They can ruin Star Wars, Jurassic Park, and every decent Disney film ever made, but they can't touch this one. And that's reassuring. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. More videos of me talking about Japanese cinema are on the way. Mata ne!